Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and I gotta wonder, is Bill Gates essentially like a 1930s to 90s villain trope? I mean, when I watch an interview like this one on CBS, it blows my mind. The guy is so ecstatic talking about the death of human beings, the mitigation of medicine, the shutdown of society until 2022. Is anybody talking about that? That he's just like openly giggling about the shutdown of society until 2022 in this country? So rather than, just hitting the highlights, because there's some highlights in this, we're going to just watch the whole thing and hope we don't get a copyright strike. I need you to thumbs the video up, subscribe, and share. We know that I am, 100% demonetized on this platform. So without you guys, I wouldn't be here. $5, $10, $15. Big donors mean the world to me. Remember, I'm a documentary filmmaker. We'll get there later. And again, make sure you're subscribed as well. Because when we watch this interview together, guys, I mean, wow. The arrogance of this dude is unbelievable. He gets confronted with the fact that, yeah, guess what? His vaccines are making people sick. They're having severe reactions. Again, why in the world would I think that any type of coronavirus vaccine for anything, whether it's COVID-19 84 or otherwise, would work when they've never been made before? He openly talks, well, we think it's going to be about 2 shots. But for the elderly, more. Like, the giggle fest in this thing makes me want to puke. Now, I want to hit some other stories really quick because this is going to be a long one anyway. Just to kind of show you how everything is getting even crazier. First of all, finally, a federal judge has pushed back against Cuomo and de Blasio for allowing the large-scale protests, we'll call them protests, because a lot of it was protests, the peaceful stuff I'm all for, right? But then I'm not for not letting people go to church or open their business or any of that stuff. So someone actually pushed back on the religious services and those restrictions. Remember, you know what? You know how much disgust I have for my state right now, and that's why I'm getting out of here and moving. Now, another thing is that obviously the mask up nationally propaganda is at new heights. And even when we go to the 6 types of coronavirus, now you would think that they might be talking about the mutations, the changes, the possibility it's much different than they say, right? When I say different, I mean, how many strains were there really? And was it a mutation or what happened here? No one's given a real explanation about this. And again, guys, thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. It says I got 3 watching right now. Obviously, it was a little higher than that a moment ago. But, I mean, take a look at the list down the line. It's basically any kind of you're not feeling well. Just point that out. You're not 100%. My voice sounds off. Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm sick. I'm saying maybe my throat is a little hoarse. You know, it's been a long trip. So let's see what we got here. These are the Moderna vaccine trials, right? This guy got a severe reaction, but he's A-okay now. and Bill Gates will tell you how it's not permanent. How do you know what the permanent results of these are going to be? I mean, good. My goodness. And let's not forget, you try to tell somebody that they killed and paralyzed people with that polio vaccine back in the day, people look at you like you're crazy. It's now the Washington Post. This is a story from April, okay? And I've been talking about it for years. There's been numerous payouts. The idea that any vaccine on a mass level for any disease is going to be safe, it's a joke. It's not even a joke. It's a joke to Bill Gates. And that's why we're going to do it live. And I know I'm going to interrupt this a ton because I've already watched it. Thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. Here's Billy Gates.
Great to talk to you. Great to talk to you, too. Let's begin with today's disturbing numbers. The U.S. reported more than 1,000 coronavirus deaths for the first time since May. Do you think we're at a tipping point?
Here comes the fear.
Well, unfortunately, we have a lot of young people who are infected, and over the next month or two, a lot of those infections will get up into older people, which is where you have the very high risk of death. And so it's kind of a race. The innovations in therapeutics are reducing the death rate.
Let's stop that. So notice he's saying the therapeutics are slowing the death rate. What he doesn't want to reveal is that the actual good therapeutics out there that we now know about and now are confirmed, steroids, right? We could talk about Bartlett. Now that I'm home, I'm going to try to get Bartlett on so we can talk about that. But, you know, hydroxychloroquine was a great preventative. The death rates are going down, A, because more people are being tested. Many people are asymptomatic. And now the treatments are very, very clear. What you want to do with somebody is not put them on a ventilator where they have an 80% chance of death and get them on some type of steroid treatment from the very beginning. He knows that. That's not what he's talking about. He still wants to shut everything down.
While this infection surge, which is really unique to the U.S., will get into the older population and drive that death rate up.
All right, I had to pause it. You see how he couldn't even... We're going to drive that death rate up. I mean, he's smiling about this. Why is he so giddy about this?
You know, several months ago, you said we need a
He can't even, like, look at his face. My God. All right. She's going to ask him, several months ago, you said we need a consistent thing for the whole nation. Nationwide shutdowns, in other words. Nationwide masks. I mean, my goodness.
consistent nationwide approach to shutting down. And you said back then that if it didn't happen, it would be a recipe for disaster. Do you think we're witnessing that disaster now?
Listen, look at this man. Did you elect him to do anything in this country whatsoever? Do you think that billionaires are benevolent? Do you think people that take joy in talking about massive deaths and restrictions of freedom like this are good people? Just a question I'll ask.
Well, there's a lot of things we can go back, and say, why wasn't there a federal testing plan? Why didn't we get the turnaround on the testing down? Why aren't we getting the tests out to low-income minority communities? Serious mistakes were made, some of which are because we didn't understand the virus very well. The understanding about the importance of masks came later.
So there he is. You notice he points to the mask propaganda. Once again, a mask is going to protect you from droplets. So look, if you're worried about somebody spitting on you, and that, yeah, I mean, that's one of the ways you can get a virus, right? But a virus is a virus, and you breathe it in and out. Your mask does nothing to protect you in that manner. Okay, that's not why they use them in surgery. But now for him to say that we wouldn't have breakouts if everybody had masks on is just more of the Johnny nonsense that's out there.
Than we wish it had. And then the U.S. had the lowest compliance with mask use of any country.
Also not true. Also not true. Think about it. Some countries didn't require masks, Bill.
Didn't have the leadership message there. So, yes, we have a lot of regrets, but, we do have innovations in the pipeline that should reduce the death rate and, eventually, by the end of next year, get us out of this terrible situation.
Did you just see that? He was laughing about that at the end. He was laughing about that at the end. I want you to, he literally, and when did he say? The end of next year to get us out of this terrible situation. What? This man is telling you he wants to lock down society again for another 17 plus months. and the only solution is going to be his solution. And it's boop. And not once, but a boopity boop, and probably a boopity boopity boop, boop, boop. It never ends with these people. Look at him. Look at him. He's literally, he wants to laugh out loud like a supervillain, but he has to clench down on his lips.
I mean, I mentioned the mortality rate, infections skyrocketing, hospitalizations, pushing hospitals to the brink in Florida, Texas.
Again, look at him. He's smirking as he's talking about how many people are in hospitals. Whew. Thumbs him up. Subscribe and share. Join the Burmese Brigade. Let's keep doing this. This is insane.
Texas, Arizona. What needs to be done immediately?
Well, some of the policies were a mistake. Opening up bars, the economic benefit versus the infection risk of a lot of activities like that made it a mistake. And so now in most of the U.S., we need to absolutely avoid those things. We need to distance. We need to use masks. We've seen that in...
Let me just stop all that. You just hear that? Most of the U.S., he wants it all. Don't let him lie to you. He wants to destroy any kind of cash business that created independence, that they don't have a control of it. I mean, literally, and train you to wear a mask and not interact with other human beings. And he's smirking and smiling. How can I be the only one that is extremely irate about this, or also extremely irate about the fact that people think that like I'm new to the party on Bill Gates? The idea he had any kind of power over any kind of medicine globally was scary enough when I was talking about it. But now that we brought Bill Gates home, and especially to New York to also reimagine education, this guy is a tyrant, man. Period.
Europe, they had the dramatic fall off. It didn't spread into the other communities, and that's because their leadership communicated with a clear voice. Their scientists were encouraged to go on TV instead of banned. And so, the population benefited. The death rate in those countries has gone down very dramatically.
Do you think that because Dr. Fauci has been prohibited from appearing on programs like ours, that has hurt the public health message?
Well, just the idea that the CDC isn't being heard from and that Fauci's being limited, you never would have predicted that.
Of course you would, Bill, because you know what? You knew you were going to get pushback on your nonsense because people are sick of it. And I mean, look how he's got the Faucian actions and languages here. Like, I mean, am I the only one that wants not only Fauci fired, but put in prison? I want him put in prison. I want this man in prison. And there's plenty of crimes we put him in prison for. I'm not calling for their heads. I want them first to be arrested for their crimes, right? We never thought we'd get Harvey Weinstein in prison. We don't need to wait 2.5, 3 years in a trial either. I mean, it's on paper. This man is a criminal at this point. I mean, think about what he's saying right now. No one would have ever thought they would have pushed back on Fauci. What are you talking about? The dude is wearing a mask for the cameras and attending baseball games. And God knows what you people are doing in private. It makes me ill.
It kind of, it
Again,
is so really unexpected that you wouldn't let the experts share. Dr. Fauci has been able through a variety of vehicles to get some of his thoughts out.
Do you see this? I mean, he's literally just, he can't even buy his own bullshit. My goodness. It's like I want to put him in like a little Peter Pan outfit instead of his sweater and his collar. You know, I mean, give me a break.
It's really the CDC that's been muzzled to a dramatic degree, that's holding us back from getting the benefit of their expertise as well.
And again, at the end, he wants to smile. He's got to grip down and go, are they buying this shit? Oh.
You know, as a mom, I hear a lot about this. We have parents, we have teachers, we have schools all in the midst of this decision about how to get kids safely back into the classroom or whether to learn totally online. So let me ask you, for the 60 million children in America, how can we do it safely?
Well, fortunately, the actual number of young people who get sick is pretty modest. And so the big challenge here is how to get the teachers and the staff in and to avoid those kids being a source of infection as they go back into their households.
Let's just stop that. Right now, I have seen zero evidence of asymptomatic to symptomatic spread. Zero. Is anybody shown that yet? Because I have yet to see it. Now, I've seen asymptomatic to asymptomatic. I do not know that I have seen otherwise. If anybody wants to send it to me, DM it. Let's do it. Let's keep going with this Gatesy.
You know, I would say that the benefits for kids, say 13 and younger, is high enough that in most of the countries you would hope to be able to open schools for those kids. As you get up into high school and college, then the infection rate, the amount of mixing gets much higher. And so if you're in a hot spot, sadly in this fall, it won't be normal school activities for most high schools and colleges.
And let me just talk about this, because I think that this is really important too. When you're in high school and you're in college, that's when you're around the most people. That's where you gain a lot of friends who end up becoming lifelong friends, right? That you hug, that you do a lot for, that you have, unforgettable human experiences. That first time you're out at a bar, 18 years old, or maybe even a little bit younger, and you're with 3 other buddies, and they got to carry you home, or you got to carry somebody else home, builds a bond. Just saying. I'm not encouraging underage drinking. That's not what I'm putting here. But it's also when you start having your first serious girlfriends, right, etc., and building those relationships. And if you don't think this is a transhumanist movement to build an automation nation, right, in a track, trace, database, social credit score society that you can't imagine the nightmare of, well, you're not checking it out. I mean, that's it. I mean, you're not being honest with yourself at this point. It's not about a virus that they can treat today and could treat yesterday and knew how to treat months ago. It's about censoring medical professionals, censoring voices of dissent, controlling information, and running away with a billionaire technopoly class that wants to oppress us. And eventually, exterminate the mass of us who refuse to take a Neuralink.
By fall 2021, which is a long time from now, I think we'll have things under control enough. But the entire academic year, this next academic year, does hang in the balance on top of the learning deficits we have coming out of last year. So I'd put that after the deaths as the next biggest cost, and one that people are having a tough time coming up with the right trade-offs now because of the lack of clear messaging.
Of clear messaging. And there he is again at the very end. Boy, he's so proud of himself. He's like,
mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, how important do you think it is that kids return to school?
It's extremely important. And so, no one should think that, this is totally a political thing where it's black and white. You want the staff to feel safe, that you're taking measures on their behalf, particularly if they're older than 65, but you want the learning to resume. And sadly, the suburban and private schools are much better at doing the online learning, where you're only coming into the classroom part of the time or none of the time. Whereas the inner city, where we've always had worse educational outcomes.
Like, again, every time he talks about something like that, like in the inner city where, boy, we really fucked those kids. I mean, he's this guy, man. What is going on here? And then you think about the teachers that are going to be afraid to come back or don't want to come back. Boy, your PSYOP really worked on them. Ooh, I'm a 60-year-old teacher. I got a pre-existing condition. What could happen? Well, I'll tell you what. Again, if you look at Bartlett's patients, a woman had cancer. She's battling with chemo, and she got right past it with the aerosolized budesonide. Just saying. But I haven't heard anyone talking about budesonide or any other steroid treatment other than that dextromethasone when the stock market went up. Because when it means the stock market goes up and it's not that readily available, and we're going to be able to mark it up, then that's what we're going to talk about it. Again, that's why Trump's executive order. Let's go. I was down on that. Go watch that video. All right, let's continue with Gates, because it only gets worse, guys. It really does. Yeah, I mean, look, he's Giddy Gates.
And that's where low-income and minority children are concentrated. They don't have the internet access or the teachers' resources to go online. And so, we should favor younger kids. We should favor the inner city. We want to not have this be a dramatic increase in that educational gap.
But Bill, where is that discussion coming from? Where is the discussion to help public schools by saying, you know what?
I mean, come on, man. What's so fucking funny, buddy? Look at this guy. I mean, is there anybody out there that could honestly do a profile of this guy during this interview and the gravity of everything that he's talking about and not clearly look at him and go, this is a sociopathic, psychopathic, eugenicist mother? Could you? I mean, my goodness. Again, who elected this guy?
But let's split the students up. We'll bring in Group A, a few days, Group B the next few days. Let's give all of the kids, someone fun to give all the kids and teachers medical masks.
Let's train your children like Pavlov's dog. Then, with Groups A and B, let's make sure we separate you further. And if you like to be an A or B, maybe we'll use that as a deterrent or an encouragement, like the little bell ringy, to decide. I mean, what's going on here?
Let's set up an app where kids can take a thermometer, give them thermometers, take their temperature before they go to school, set up hand washing stations. I don't hear any of that discussion from whether it's states leaders, national leaders, city leaders. Am I missing that?
Well, yeah, we're kind of stuck on the open them up completely versus, hey, if there's any risk, I don't want to go work there. And, those are two extreme positions. So the nuance of going part of the time, favoring the inner city, favoring the younger kids, having the policies in hotspots be more restrictive than in places that have gotten further along. Ironically, some of the non-hotspots right now are looking at being more restrictive than some of the hotspots.
Look how happy he is. He's like, actually, some of the places where there isn't really a problem, they're ready to go and do all this stuff. It's where we've said there's a lot of infections that they don't want to do it. I mean, what is going on?
Are because of the political connection. So it's time for a discussion where it's not this black and white, hey, go in every day versus not going in at all, to set the priorities and to have the other activities reduced enough that you prioritize the slight infection increase that school activities will create and still stay below a exponential growth in infections.
I mean, I can't help but stop it every time he stops because he's so fucking proud of the way he just answered that with a fucking smile and smirk on his face. And again, he is literally, I mean, take a look. My goodness.
Bill, one of our viewers texted us this question. His name is Eric. He's actually from Washington State, where you are, and he asked, would you send your children to public school in this current situation?
Oh, boy. Thanks, Eric.
If a school is being careful, then yes. Now, if they live in a multi-generational household, where you have old people that they're exposed to, you have to look how hard would it be for you to reduce the grandparents' exposure to those kids. If you live in a single generation.
Let's stop it there. Reduce the grandparents' exposure to those kids. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I was a younger boy, me and my brother, we spent a lot of time with our grandparents. A lot of time. My mom was young, okay? And that's normal to spend time with your grandparents when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, even beyond that, Those that are lucky enough to have our grandparents into our 20s and 30s, right? All I'm saying is this is just beyond bizarre that we haven't pushed back yet, that we haven't talked about, again, the treatments that are working, the death rate plummeting, and the fact that, again, they're trying to encompass just about everything in these, why would I want to go to the doctor? So if I had, let's see, a headache, the whole thing of loss of smell or loss of smell or taste, I mean, come on. Muscle pains, cough, sore throat, chest pains, no fever. Headache, loss of smell, cough, sore throat, hoarseness, fever, loss of appetite. I mean, come on. Give me a break. Headache. Meanwhile, they pour the fear on. They pour the interferon. Let's just go back in. All right, let's get back to Gates. Thumbs the video up, subscribe, and share. Again, the worst is yet to come.
Generational household, and you have a school that's being careful, then I do think it's reasonable to say, my kid can get that the educational opportunity, particularly as the kids are younger. People will have the freedom to make choices here, but we do need to remember it's mostly the transmission into the older people that drives these, really horrific deaths per day.
As we're talking about a record number of infections every day being reported, the president said,
I mean, look how as we're talking about record numbers of infection. I mean, come on, man.
Just this weekend that the U.S. has the lowest mortality rate in the world. Is that factually correct?
Not at all, not even close. I mean, by almost every measure, the U.S. is one of the worst. And I think we can change that, but it's an ugly picture.
Why are we one of the worst?
We opened up. We actually had criteria for opening up.
First of all, the opening up, there's been no correlation with the death numbers shooting up. Okay, and again, look how you can't keep a smile off his face talking about all this.
Said you had to have cases declining, and we opened up with cases increasing. We somehow got masks as this politicized thing that somehow and some like harbinger of freedom that just covering your mouth was awful.
Yeah, it is. It's transhumanist bullshit, and you know it, and I'm sick of it. My God.
And, so now we can move forward. Now we have the president saying that he hears from some people that it's good to wear a mask. And so let's run with that.
Hey, he's really happy about it, huh? He's acting like we got him. He did it. We got him to push the mask. He was on Hannity talking about it. Hey, and he was. And I said that, and boy, I know. If you're Trump all the time and you dare criticize him. Optics, Jason, optics. 47D chess.
Try to get compliance levels up to something like the European level.
Again, compliance levels up to the European level as he sits there and smiles and smirks. You think about this interview and the amount that he's smiling. You would think like it was an 8-year-old boy's birthday party giving one present after another and talking about it. That's how ridiculous this is.
I want to turn now to the race for a cure. We've seen a lot of promising news this week on the vaccine front. What do you make of the results from AstraZeneca and Moderna?
Well, it's very hard to characterize complex scientific things in a sort of simple to understand format. We don't know if these vaccines will work. We don't know if they'll work to avoid deaths. We don't know if they'll work to avoid transmission.
Let's stop right there. So right there out of the gates, he's basically saying, well, you'll still get it, but you won't die from it, maybe. But we're going to force you to take it. I just want to point that out. Okay, just to start off with how horrible this whole thing is. Okay, so right out of the gates, hey, you know what? The vaccine doesn't have to stop you from getting it. It'll just maybe stop you from dying from it. Wait, I thought I wasn't really going to die from it before. And I might not get it anyway. What do you mean? What do you mean? Do I have to wear a mask now? Masky McGee? Do I have to mask Gatesy? I need to slow down so I understand it.
That's why we're working on so many first-generation vaccines and a whole bunch of second-generation vaccines that...
Oh, the old second-generation vaccine. Wait, how many vaccines am I taking here, Bill?
Although they'll take more time, they are more likely to be extremely effective. It's great the U.S. government has been willing to fund vaccine manufacturers. Our foundation is partnered with them on that. That's something in my regular phone calls with Dr. Fauci we update each other on. Okay, how are we working with various companies? Which ones do we think we need to add to the mix there? What is the scalability going to be so that not just the U.S. but the entire world gets the vaccine?
The entire world. Yeah. Again, why are we even allowing globally unaccountable billionaire eugenicists in the country or on television or giving them money or working with them? I don't understand it. I don't get it. If somebody else wants Bill Gates, take him. Please. Get him out. It's a disgrace to my country.
So yes, I am very hopeful in innovations in both therapeutics and vaccines. The advanced therapeutics will come first, but in 2021, probably in the first half, we're going to get some good vaccine tools, and that'll be a big milestone.
Tools, milestone.
So next week marks a huge milestone. We have Operation Warp Speed is going to begin phase 3 for 4 of these vaccines. Right here in the U.S., they're trying to do 30,000 for each of those 4 vaccines, about 120,000 people totally. When will we know? How do we know if these vaccines are working?
Well, there's 3 things you'd like from a vaccine.
So, first of all, notice the question and how he stuttered on it. How will we know these are working? He's not really going to answer that question. There are 3 things that you want from a vaccine. Number 1, you want it to be profitable for me. Number 2, you want it to have really questionable ingredients as what we like to call preservatives. Okay? That's what we're going to want. And 3, we want them to be wildly uncomfortable. Let's just say it that way, huh? That's what we want over Bill Gates. Here we go.
Like it to be very safe in all the populations that you indicated for, no side effects. You'd like it to block transmission, and you'd like it to avoid the individual who gets the vaccine getting sick. The phase 3 endpoint is slightly different than those things, so that we can accumulate events quickly. So we aren't doing.
Do you really just see what he said? He said, look, we're protecting our ass here. You'd love them to work, okay, number 1. We'd love them not to harm people and be safe with no side effects, number 2. Okay, don't worry about any of this. And, we want to be effective, but not with actually letting you get sick from the dose of the vaccine, which happens all the time. But we're skipping all that. We're skipping it all.
Doing it like a long-term vaccine thing. And even calling it warp speed is scary because it suggests, that you're willing to make trade-offs against safety, which you should never be willing to do.
But you are.
The FDA is being pressured to allow what's called just a correlate approval. Fortunately, they've held the line on that to this point because we wouldn't know enough just based on the antibody levels. And, these trials, the bad news, of course, when we have many cases is good news for the trials in that they may accumulate events faster than they would have otherwise. But there'll be a lot of uncertainty about how good these vaccines are.
See, you said now we're back to the questions. How safe are they going to be? And he goes, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty about these, how good they are. Notice the safety's not there. I mean, he literally has already let himself off the hook for any kind of disaster that happens with this. And don't worry, they're going to bring up the fact that 80% of people who took these vaccines had side effects, including getting sick. What is going on? My goodness.
The first generation, they said a 50% effectiveness, and they won't know the duration there. So these are going to be likely partial solutions that will improve over time. And so it's too bad, people think that just that phase 3 approval will be the end of the epidemic.
Well, I want to ask you, you mentioned side effects. The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning.
Yeah.
We looked. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Oh.
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators.
So let's get there. The FDA is going to look at it right out of the gates. Look, I just told you, we're not liable for anything but making money and controlling people. Don't you get it, lady? All right. The FDA is going to look at it. We're going to tell you, I mean, yeah, a lot of people had severe side effects and got sick. And I get it. We want everybody to get this vaccine and force it upon people, and only a fraction of the population actually gets it, and even a fraction of that goes to the hospital, and then a fraction of that actually dies from it. But yeah, I don't want to be accountable for the fact that we might, get people sick.
And their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate. And the side effects were not super severe. That is,
Bullshit.
It didn't cause permanent health problems for the things that are,
When you talk about permanent health problems, how would you know? How would you know what's going to develop later on? These people got very ill.
Moderna did have to go with a fairly high dose. And so, to get the antibodies, some of the other vaccines are able to go with lower doses to get responses that are pretty high, including the J&J and the Pfizer. And so there's a lot of characteristics of these vaccines. It's great that we have multiple of them that are
Bill,
going out there. And yes, I think
you know the data
US
better than I do.
government-
But Bill, the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a side effect.
That's everybody with a high dose. Well, I mean, look, let's not get too far into this. But yeah, no, we're going to get people sick. We're going to get them real sick. I mean, we're still going to lock you in your house and make you wear a mask, treat you like a slave, build a UBI, bring in the automation nation, and then have you have a brain chip and tell you that the planet is overpopulated anyway while we lie to you. But no, people are going to get sick.
Yeah, but some of that is not dramatic where, it's just, super painful. But yes.
It's just super painful. It's not dramatic, it's just super painful.
We need to make sure there's not severe side effects. The FDA, I think, will do a good job of that, despite the pressure.
And again, he's just. I mean, is there anybody out there that can tell me that this is how you should react if you're being truthful and honest and earnest about a global situation where people are getting sick and dying and you're trying to actually save them? Can anybody out there? I mean, my goodness. They just told you, he basically just told you there's no way any of this is going to be safe. It's not going to work, okay? And I'm going to absolve myself of any of it. And we'll probably still be locking you down. He's talking about 2022. Maybe we're out of the situation. I'm going to tell you how many times you're going to get it. You're going to get it a few times, okay, at least. Get ready.
How many doses of the vaccine will we need?
Well, none of the vaccines at this point appear like they'll work with a single dose. That was the hope at the very beginning. Maybe one of them, particularly in the second generation, won't surprise us. We hope just 2, although in the elderly, sometimes it takes more. And so making sure we have lots of elderly people in the trial will give us that data.
You've said some more than 7 billion doses. That's what we'll need.
Well, if what you're trying to do is block all the transmission, then you need to get 70-80% coverage on a global basis. So that, it's unbelievably big numbers.
Did you just hear him? 7 billion doses of something that is going to cause pain and sickness doesn't have to work. He's smirking, he's smugging. What are we doing here? Guys, he's right. There's 7 billion plus of us. And there's about 100 guys and gals like him. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And why would we allow a guy like him to dictate to us any fucking thing? Okay? My goodness.
I mean, you're talking about a global vaccination program without a vaccine that hasn't been fully developed yet, and a massive scaling up of how to produce one or several vaccines. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about this effort.
But the private companies have stepped up. The science has been advanced.
When did the science get advanced? Well, are we talking? I mean, we're not talking about the nanobot conspiracy, right? What are you talking about, man? While you smile and giggle. Because you said there's no nanobot stuff, huh? There's no chimera action, right? The science has been advanced. A global vaccination program from an unaccountable, unelectable billionaire. Eugenicist.
U.S. funds biological research more than any other country. We've stepped up to fund these vaccine manufacturers. The plants are being worked out now. In 2021, there's a good chance this can get done. And because,
in 2021, today's date is 7/27/2020. rolling lockdowns, face masks for no reason. They're taking away your summer. They're taking away nightlife. They're taking away businesses. They're taking away cash. Man, when I was across the country, there was a lot of places not taking coins. Some people weren't taking cash at all. It's scary. It's scary. And if you don't think that this, again, is that transhumanist agenda, please go watch Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture after this. They are free. Okay? It's exactly what this is. Let's continue.
This is about the billions that we need to spend to save trillions and avoid all those deaths.
But who's going to get the vaccine first?
That's in discussion. Clearly, the U.S., by funding factories in the U.S., will get priority. But if we can have other factories, and this is where the U.S. government's traditional generosity and global health will be needed, our foundation will be needed, other countries. We want to make sure that we don't have people dying just because they can't afford to have access to the vaccine. And
What? I'm telling you right now that nobody's going to be dying from not being able to afford the vaccine. That's not your plan at all. That's like a little Faucian talking point that'll be out there later, you know?
so that speaks to the top priority of our foundation. And there's good discussions going underway. The U.S. in this next relief bill may put 1% of it to make sure we stop the pandemic.
Oh, you caught me. You guys should be stopping the vaccine. I mean, is that the face of a weasel? I don't know. I mean, is that harmful content that's a little Weasley face up there right now? I mean, come on. With a weasel laugh. Oh.
In the entire world, and then that'll draw other countries into that effort.
I want to ask you about today, the government support, taxpayer money that's going towards vaccine development. Today, we learned Pfizer is going to get nearly $2 billion, Moderna receiving $438 million in taxpayer money. And yet both companies have said they will not sell the vaccine at cost. They're going to make a profit on it. Should pharmaceutical companies profit off this vaccine research that taxpayers have helped fund?
Well, the Pfizer case is more of a procurement agreement than an R&D funding agreement. AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson have said they're going to use a non-profit construct.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that a non-profit construct, you're so full of shit. You're telling me that corporations don't care about people just living? That they just want to make money? Huh. Wow, Bill.
The exact contracts that were negotiated, I don't have access to. But yes, you'd want to balance the fact who's taking the risk and who gets the benefit of those things. It's fantastic that the research is being funded. And, I hope those...
I mean, the snakiness of all this and the giddiness of all this, I mean, listen. If you show this to any normal person that has any brain in their head, doesn't matter if they're a Republican or a Democrat, and you just watch this interview cold, why the fuck is this guy so happy?
Agreements in terms of pricing and access are very strong.
I mean, we heard from the HHS secretary say today that the vaccine will be free for Americans, or affordable. So that means the government will help purchase it from companies that are making a profit off of that we helped fund the research for. Do you see any problem with that?
Well, some of the vaccines are being done by companies on a non-profit basis. A few have decided, otherwise. And so if you have equivalent vaccines, the one that's the cheapest will be the one that we go with. And we may have, many choices here.
I mean, they're talking about many choices. Going with the cheapest doesn't have to work. Might get you sick. Could be painful. already multiple doses. I mean, the zombie land. Zombie land.
That some of which look like, the production costs will be quite low. So I do honestly think both in therapeutics and in vaccines we'll end up that it'll be a very clear deal what should be purchased, and that'll be worked out. Whether people second guess the early buyer contracts, that's not really the key issue. We will get a good deal on the vaccine, and we need the world to get a good deal on it.
We're going to make sure we shoot them up. I didn't say $7 billion for nothing. I didn't say that we weren't going to shut down society as much as we could until 2022, because we're not planning on injecting people, okay?
And there's many of the companies have committed themselves to that.
Mm-hmm. The Gates Foundation is one of the largest funders of vaccine research in the world. Vaccines save millions and millions of people around the world every year. Are you concerned about a growing anti-vaccination disinformation campaign that exists on social media?
Yeah, it's always a concern because vaccines are so key to keeping measles deaths down. Vaccines helped us eradicate polio. Vaccines.
Let's just I want to point out again that, also killed people with that polio vaccine. I know it's just the Washington Post. I know I've been talking about it for 15 plus years, okay? That SV40, simian virus 40, caused cancer in apes and other hominids, you know what I mean, aka people. Oh yeah, this also paralyzed and killed kids too. I know it's out there, but we're nutty. They just said anybody who had a high dose of the thing got sick. And that we don't even know that the vaccine's going to not make you sick. In fact, it just might not make it kill you, even though it might not kill you and probably wouldn't kill you anyway with this. I mean, we are in wild times here. Thumbs the video up, subscribe, and share, everybody.
Are so important. They've played the primary role in cutting child to death in half over the last 20 years.
Did they?
That our foundation, the U.S. government have been very involved in that. So explaining how careful we are about vaccine safety is super important. During a pandemic, I can understand people's anxieties levels going up, but explaining what the testing is doing, we will need a lot of people to be willing to take the vaccine to stop the transmission.
Well, I won't be willing to take the vaccine, quite frankly. And I know a lot of people aren't going to be willing to take the vaccine. And you can call it a misinformation or disinformation campaign, but we just sat here and watched almost all of your interview, okay? And we broke down a lot about how you just said it doesn't have to work, basically, right? It doesn't have to protect you from the virus. You're going to need multiple shots. Older people are going to need multiple more, right? That you want to lock down society until 2022, that anybody in high school or college shouldn't be doing it, that bars should be closed. I mean, you're making it pretty clear what this is about, man, and you can't stop smiling and laughing while you do it. Literally, and then there's not one break in the conversation where he wants to just smile his fucking mouth off, and he has to... I mean, it's weird. Guys, remember, this is harmful content according to YouTube. The GoFundMe's there. I need your help now more than ever. But we're gonna close it out. Got a few more minutes here of Billy Gates.
You have been the subject of a disinformation campaign. In fact, the posts on social media about you and coronavirus are considered the most widespread coronavirus falsehoods that exist.
Now, first of all, what are we talking about here? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, okay, with Event 201, with Johns Hopkins University, with the World Health Organization, with the World Bank, with Johnson & Johnson, the CDC in China and America, put on a mass exercise where a coronavirus comes out of South America and causes mass death as they manage the planet. Okay? So let's get that out of the way. What is the disinformation campaign there? Explain it to me. This guy's been promoting vaccinations and population reduction and control forever. It is documented. It's not hip to be square, okay? This is it. This guy has been very outward about what he wants.
So I want to address some of them. To be clear, do you want a vaccine so that you can implant microchips into people?
No, there's no connection between any of these vaccines and any tracking type thing at all. I don't know where that came from.
Again, sure, we should just totally take his word for it, but is that what I put out? No, you already have the Track Trace Database Society where people have GPS everywhere, and you're about to put a Neuralink in people's heads. All right? I mean, again, let's ask him, the most discreditable stuff.
And yet there was a poll by YouGov and Yahoo that shows 44% of Republicans, 19% of Democrats, and 24% of independents think that you want to do that.
Oh, listen, want to? Oh man, he'd love to inject them people with a Gates tracker base. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm actually encouraged by these numbers. That this many people are like, yeah, I don't trust this motherfucker. Why would you? He just acted like it was Christmas Day talking about all this.
How did this conspiracy start?
I don't know. Dr. Fauci and I are sort of the two most mentioned, and some of these are deeply ironic. Like, our foundation is about reducing death and, bringing equity to health, and yet the idea that we get accused of creating chips or the virus. I think we just need to get the truth out there. We need to explain our values so that people understand why we're involved in this work and why we're willing to put hundreds or billions to accelerate the progress.
You're willing to do it because it not only controls the population, but you're making a 20-to-1 payout. That's why. Like, don't act like you're some kind of benevolent being. I don't buy into your super best friend's propaganda, brah.
It's a little unclear to me, but, I hope it'll die down as people get the facts.
I know, but I want to ask you this because you're a co-founder of Microsoft. You travel in the circles of many of these tech leaders who control these companies. I know you know them. There was a Facebook post with that widely debunked conspiracy theory that says that you want to do that. It was shared tens of thousands of times. It's still on Facebook. And I reached out to Sheryl Sandberg today about it. Facebook has told me that they will send it to review about whether to take it down. Does Facebook have a responsibility to do more in terms of shutting down this misinformation?
Bill Gates, old school tech. New school eugenicist? No, old school eugenicist. Gonna tell Zuckerberg, new school tech, new school eugenicist. Listen, I don't want to defend Zuckerberg, but I feel almost bad for him because back in the day, he was pushing back against this Russian interference narrative, and they just got him in line. I'm not saying he's a great person, but, I mean, my goodness. The Zuck should have just fired back and said, no, we're not going to censor anything. His platform probably would have been crushed, and maybe if it wasn't, if he only got more and more popular, he may have been killed. But hey, you got to have convictions in life.
Yeah, well, they are willing to get rid of anti-vaccination messages that are, false there. So there's a constant dialogue about, okay, how do they make sure that these completely false things don't get out there? You don't want to suppress, normal dialogue about safety studies, but the conspiracy theories, they, are starting to step up on, and we feel like we have a good dialogue with them about how to do that.
Oh, do you?
I want to ask you about what appears to be a growing testing crisis in America with long lag times in order to get test results back, especially in Sunbelt states. Most of the tests to date have been
Sunbelt states, spikes, spikes in the Sun Belt.
PCR tests and the nasal swab tests. Where are we in terms of a rapid diagnostic test? You've talked about this a lot. It would be a test that is like an in-home pregnancy test. Where are those tests?
In the next 2 to 4 months, some of those tests will get approved. Now, they won't be as accurate as the PCR, which is a molecular test.
They won't be as, I love it. The testing's not that accurate. We're marking things down. The vaccine might not work. You could actually get sick. I mean, what is, I think we're done here. I think we're done here. Thumbs the video up. Subscribe and share. I mean, if you thought that this thing was as ludicrous as I did, please. And please, Invisible Empire, New World Order Defined, Shade the Motion Picture, Shade the Motion Picture 2013, big sections on Gates. Please check it out. Make sure you're thumbing up, subscribing, sharing, checking me out over on Rockfin as well. I just threw up an old school interview that I did way back in 2006. So if you're a premium member, it's not on my YouTube channel. It's exclusively over at Rockfin, and it kind of shows you where I'm coming from all the way back almost 15 years ago. I love you guys. Without you, couldn't be doing this. So I will see you on the flip side, and keep exposing guys like that. Think about it. Laughed his ass off, smiled his way through that. I want to vomit.